Welcome to another episode of Purchase to Profits. I'm Seth Ferguson. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss our daily interviews with successful real estate investors. Our guest today owns income property across 4 states and has worked on more than 70 deals ranging from value-add renos to new construction. His main focus is on revitalizing shopping centers to maximize returns. Sean Katona is managing partner of Simplified Properties. Sean, welcome to Purchase to Profits. It's great to have you on the show.
Excited to be here, Seth.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. I'm really excited to learn about what you're doing with the shopping centers. So to kick things off, do you want to tell us about your real estate goals right now?
So for 2019, and it's February now, it's still relatively fresh and top of mind. My focus is buying a couple more shopping centers in the Phoenix market. I project we'll probably do 1 to 3 this year, somewhere in that ballpark. I target deals today that are in the $3 to $5 million purchase price range and look exclusively for value add properties with significant upside potential. So usually they're underperforming or mismanaged, or something has happened where they're not at their pro forma or highest and best use. And so we can get in there, get our hands dirty, do some work, clean things up, lease up vacancy, bring rents to market, do some capital improvements or facade renovations or whatever it is, and bring those properties to their highest and best use. So that's really my focus on a day-to-day: buy more buildings and lease up the ones that we do have to bring them to their highest and best use.
Yeah. And 1 to 3 properties for an acquisition this year, that's a pretty wide range. So I'm just trying to understand, do you, at the start of the year, do you say, hey, I want to target X amount of dollar volume? Or is it just more, whenever the deal flow comes in, that's when you pull the trigger?
Yeah, good question. I guess somewhat it ties back to a number, but also just knowing, kind of what my capacity is and how much I want to work and
Yeah.
how much investor capital I have to go place and how much new investor capital I expect to come in. And so, for me, with each one of these deals, that can add a couple $100,000 in cash flow to the bottom line. And so I'm today, comfortable and satisfied adding, 1 or 2 deals a year to the portfolio that creates good, stable, predictable income for my family, but also, friends of ours that want to invest with us in projects because there's enough to go around.
Yeah. And how did you get into the shopping centers? Because that's, I would say with most people focusing on real estate getting started, most people gravitate towards that single family, small multifamily. How did shopping centers factor into that for you?
Yeah, good question. So my background is definitely in single family, right? I started out dinking around with rentals and fix and flips, and I did wholesale deals, and I did new construction, and I did a lot of renovations. And kind of cut my teeth in that world. And I still have a number of single family properties in portfolio. I am an investor in a larger apartment building deal. It was about a $30 million transaction. So I love units, but there's some unique things with retail that make it compelling. I think today in the market cycle, it's pretty competitive to buy apartment buildings. And so you see quality deals trading in Orange County, 3 caps. Or 4 caps and 5 caps is not uncommon. So there's not a lot of spread or arbitrage between what the debt service might be or the mortgage payment, right? So conversely, with shopping centers, it's almost like doom and gloom in the headlines right now. And it's a little bit of a contrarian play where, everyone wants multifamily because they understand it, they grasp it, they know it. But I'm really liking a lot of the internet resistant neighborhood shopping centers that are kind of service centric. And so, as I think down my tenant roster, it's a dog groomer, it's a nail salon, it's an insurance brokerage, it's a physical therapy, it's a barber shop. It's, places where people still need to go. I haven't figured out how to get a haircut on Amazon yet. Or, my wife goes out to get her nails done. It's the stuff that today is still relevant. As some of those maybe older retailers, you think about Sears and Toys R Us, are kind of reinventing the business model, or if they didn't adapt to some of the changing times, are going the way of the dodo bird.
Yeah. So was there, you had mentioned you had dabbled in that single family space. Was there one event that happened that made you switch gears? Like what caused you to look at the shopping centers?
So I guess what attracted me to single family is it's what I knew, right? It's what you see on TV. It's what you hear about friends or family doing. Hey, I've got a rental here. It's probably where 90% of real estate investors play.
Yeah.
And as we built our nest egg a little bit and did some flips and did some wholesales and were able to bank some capital, you start transitioning. And really, my long-term goal was to have passive income and cash flow coming in. So at some point you could step away from the corporate America gig, or you don't have to flip houses for the rest of your life. And a couple summers ago, I had about 15 flips going simultaneously, and it was just a lot to manage, even with team members. I've had how many contractors going on with how many job sites, and how many lender payments were happening simultaneously, and contractors doing a little bit of over promising and under delivering. And so all of a sudden you're like, wow, I've really got a lot to manage here. What could I do to create stable, steady, predictable income and not have to do so many projects to make a great living? And so I guess what happened is fewer larger projects that are maybe higher quality, that have better returns. A couple of the things that I love about buildings: we've got good cash flow coming in. We've got tenants paying down our mortgage for us. We've got the depreciation or the tax advantages that come along with owning large buildings. And then we can force appreciation into the building by doing some things with the income and the expenses that really have significant magnitude. Signing a lease or two in a shopping center deal can be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars to the bottom line, and ultimately either the appraisal or the resale value on the back end.
Yeah. And as you were growing your business, making that transition to the shopping centers, did you ever try some strategies that you thought might work and ended up falling flat?
Dozens.
Yeah.
I mean, it certainly was a pivot from my residential business, and it was learning a whole new industry terms. It's a different set of brokers typically, or agents that work on those properties. And so, you're restarting the Rolodex in many degrees. In the case of investors, I went from offering my private investors debt, where they were getting just a very predictable payment on their loan, to giving them an equity position in the property. So they own the building like I own the building now.
Mm-hmm.
And, all of those things have a learning curve with them. And certainly it took me a long time to find a great deal, or at least a good solid double in the case that I'm thinking of, the first building that I bought. I probably offered on dozens, if not, close to 100 properties, to get the one that crossed the finish line with compelling numbers that had substantial upside, where the risk to reward profile made sense, not just to me, but to the banker and also to our friends and family who, own that deal with us.
Yeah. And you had mentioned it was a transition from, doing that residential to that commercial side. How did your mindset have to change in order for you to succeed in that commercial space?
I guess anyone would have to get comfortable working with deals that have an extra comma and more zeros behind it. I mean, my typical flip was probably 2, 3, 4, 500,000, for purchase or resale price. And I'm only looking at buildings in the multi-millions of dollars, just because the time that it takes to find one, to negotiate it, to underwrite, to do the pursuit cost, the due diligence, the tenant interviews, like all the things that go along with it. So you can do that on a $600,000 building, or you can do it on a $3 million building that has 3, 4, 5, 6 times the cash flow potentially, and profit if you were to go to, let's say, resell it.
Yeah. No, that's a good answer. So, looking at all the deals you've done so far, is there one that stands out as a keystone deal?
I think it's fun to talk about, one of your earlier projects, or in this case my first one, and it's a shopping center in the Phoenix market. So that could be one that has some lessons to be learned for anybody that's watching. And for me, it was a long, slow closing, but it's a deal that has really come together nicely. So we're at a stage now where we can kind of look back and say, hey, here's what happened and here's where it sits today. Um, it's a property that is located just outside of Phoenix, like in a suburb there. It was bank owned, and it was really in a place where it was not performing at its highest potential. And so it met a lot of those criteria that I was looking for. You look at it and say, hey, today it's throwing off this much income. Down the road, it could be worth this much, and we could significantly grow the net operating income of the building. So that's the opportunity and the upside that I was seeking out.
Yeah. And you mentioned it was bank owned. So was this a marketed listing or was it kind of a pocket listing? How'd you source it?
Yeah, believe it or not, it was listed on LoopNet, and it had sat out there for a long, long time, and it was listed for quite a bit more than what we ended up buying it for. And so, through some negotiation and then ultimately a price reduction during due diligence, we were able to pick it up at a cost basis that made sense.
Yeah.
And we made money right out of the gate, and even we're cash flowing nicely from day one. So, it can feel like LoopNet is pretty picked over. And, if you talk to a lot of seasoned brokers, they always take the deals out to their best buyers first, and then their next best buyers. And then it kind of trickles out to the broker community. And then finally, if it reaches LoopNet, a lot of people have passed on it. But, this is one that I still liked. And, it may not have made sense at the price that they listed it at, but, to get a pretty substantial reduction made it pencil.
Yeah, you make a really good point with kind of the marketing cycle with properties, how it goes from that inner circle and goes outwards. So, what do you think you saw in the property that all the other eyeballs didn't see? Like, what was that angle that you took on it?
I'm sure price was a big part of it. I got the right deal at the right time. It happened to be the end of the bank's fiscal year. And so they were more motivated probably than they'd been historically to get this thing off their books.
Yeah.
The folks who are managing internally are just like, look, this is taking a ton of time away from our normal day-to-day job. Like, banks don't want to be in the business of owning property, right? They want to lend money out. And so I think, to some degree I was lucky, or I followed up, or I just got them at the right time. And that was one of many, many, many deals that I offered on. And so this is the one that happened to strike with the pricing. And, it's not in core downtown Phoenix. It's more of a bedroom community submarket. And so some investors won't buy there. Some investors don't buy unless it has a Starbucks in it, or a Chipotle, or, is on a hard corner and has 40,000 cars a day passing in front of it. And so everyone's got a different profile. And, at this stage in my career, I'm comfortable owning this type of asset in this location. And, I'd probably call it a B quality center. It's never going to have a Starbucks in it, but that's okay. That can be a great moneymaker. And in many cases, I see that you can get higher cash on cash returns in a shopping center like this versus, a Starbucks is going to trade at a 5 cap or a 5.25 cap or something along those lines.
Yeah. So what was your business plan going into this property? Like, what did you have to lease it up? Like, what was the situation when you purchased it, and what were you hoping to do?
Yeah, it was basically the entire tenant base and rent roll was unstabilized. So almost all the leases have burned off. There were most of the tenants that were month to month, and so they could leave at any point without any penalty. There was certainly some deferred maintenance on the building, just things that the bank hadn't done that they probably should have been doing. And so when we came in there, we solved for a lot of those things. It was, a new stripe and seal on the parking lot. We repainted the entire exterior of the building. We freshened up the landscaping. We took down some old signage. We updated, we rebranded the shopping center. And so it kind of had a new feel. It gave us the opportunity to tell a story, right?
Yeah.
There's new managers, there's new owners of this building that are doing things that maybe past ownership wasn't willing to do. And, my philosophy is to come in and say, how can I support these tenants in their business? What's going to get them more foot traffic? What's going to get them more business so that they can, pay great rents and want to stay for a long time? It's a win-win for both parties if we're doing it right. So once we had done some of the physical repairs and we could point those things out and go and talk to the tenants and say, hey, what do you want to see happen here? Or how can we support you and solve those? Then we can go in and do some of the other things financially, like renewing the leases, bringing lease rates to market, trimming down some of the expenses, which all ultimately boost the net operating income of the building.
Yeah. And this one being your first project, did you have any challenges financing the property?
We were in a decent place financially. I have solid credit. We had a balance sheet. We've got a number of other properties in different states and, good cash flow coming in. And so you could say we were very lendable from the bank standpoint. They want to see a certain net worth. But it was a small enough dollar amount where they were able to give us the green light, even though, it was, kind of the first of its kind for our portfolio. She said, look, you've done real estate, you've done a lot of different types of transactions. We're comfortable with you as an operator. And so we were actually able to get a conventional fixed loan coming right out of the gate. I think a lot of deals like this would probably require bridge capital or a kind of a short-term hard money loan. But they said, look, if you can get, commitments from a lot of these tenants before you close, we feel comfortable doing the loan. Show us that you got the deals signed shortly after closing. So that was unique. But our seller was very cooperative. The bank was working with us the whole time. Coincidentally, that bank that sold us the property also did the loan. And so they were very familiar with it. They knew the asset, they knew the tenants, they knew the history, they knew the income. They really were just signing up a new sponsor or operator to come in there and do some of that ground game, grunt work, heavy lifting of getting it really dialed in.
Yeah. And were you aiming, once you got things, tidied up and stabilized, were you aiming to do some sort of refi at some point? Like, how did you structure that?
Yeah, so we're kind of in that period right now where we have the building at its highest potential. All of the leases at the property have been renewed or extended. Everyone has been brought to market rates. We are 100% occupied. The last tenant is working on their build out right now, but it's about as good as it's going to get from an income, cash flow, and even valuation standpoint. So now you're kind of in that age-old debate of, do you test the market and see what it would sell for? Do you refinance and get a longer-term, more stabilized loan? Do you pull a little bit of cash out and return some of that capital to your investors? And so, I've got the good fortune of being able to do any of those things, and I think they're all nice to have. So we've got the cash flow if we want to hold it. We could return some capital, or if someone wants to come along and buy a nice turnkey asset with very predictable income, this would be a great property for that.
Yeah, I like the plug. So let me know if somebody wants to move on this property, and we can hook you guys up.
It really comes down to the big boss, my wife. It's like, hun, do you want the cash flow, or would you rather have X amount of dollars sitting in the bank, which you'd probably just want to redeploy into more projects to get more cash flow? I mean, that's kind of the long-term play, right? We're all looking for stable, predictable, steady income coming in. And like I talked about those for-profit centers earlier, like commercial real estate is just a great platform to have multiple profit centers stacked together.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned your wife. Is she pretty involved in the business as well?
Day to day, not nearly as much as I am, but she knows everything about our portfolio. She certainly gives her blessing and sign off before we buy anything or green light a new tenant. And so, my success in this arena is her success, and her success is mine. And, we're together on all these properties. And so it's great to have a great sounding board in her, and she understands this. And, she spent a lot of time learning the business with me while it's not her, primary focus day to day. She's got a great grasp on the portfolio. And I feel fortunate that she's so supportive of this and, just as excited about it as I am, because she sees what it can do, not just for our friends and family who invest, but, for our family, for our kids and the life that it can create when you've got, a number of buildings in portfolio that are just cranking off cash flow like crazy. And not to mention some of the tax advantages that come with owning bigger deals. I mean, it can, for some couples create an opportunity where, they have very little tax liabilities, but still can make a pretty substantial income.
Yeah. Maybe, do you want to talk a little bit about, let me phrase it this way. People sometimes ask, I want to get involved in real estate investing, but, my other partner is not on board. You've built a successful business with your wife being that supportive asset with you. How would you suggest somebody approach that with their spouse or significant other and really get a team effort going to build their business?
You can hear my little guy crying in the background, so apologize for that. But I think you have got to be speaking the same language. Your goals have to be aligned, and that probably goes for a business partner or a spouse, even more so. But if she didn't have a good grasp and understanding of the fundamentals of commercial real estate or retail, it'd be pretty hard to get her on board with buying a multi-million-dollar property and getting up to my eyeballs in debt. Good debt, right? Yeah. The tenants are paying down the mortgage, but she understands all the benefits that come along with that. And so if she didn't know that, we'd be in a really tough situation. She gets it, and she's supportive of it because she has a good understanding of the business.
Yeah. And this is a good segue into, you had mentioned, the benefits of owning real estate. How has getting involved in real estate and really upping your game on the commercial side changed your life right now?
I mean, I'm at a point where, I'm no longer working a job in corporate America. We've got a tremendous amount of freedom and flexibility. We've got the resources, to be able to, impact the lives of others. I think about, all the vendors and partners that support us, the people that invest in our buildings. I'm able to work from home. I do have a crying baby in the background, but we're able to be together, and there's no limit on vacation time. This business is such where I probably go to Phoenix a couple times a quarter, but more or less I can run our portfolio from just about anywhere. We've got boots on the ground and vendors that we work with, but if we wanted to spend a month on vacation or traveling around, we have the capacity to do that now. And the income stream is there where, you're not going to be living off of ramen noodles. It can be a pretty comfortable lifestyle. And the crazy thing is it doesn't take that many commercial transactions to make that possible, right? One or two of these deals can put an annual salary and cash flow into someone's bank account, or certainly be enough to retire, a spouse, or you go, hey, we've got an entire income stream coming in here, plus what other income streams we might have coming in for our business or from salaries or whatever that might look like for someone. So, I think that's obviously what attracts so many people to owning real estate, be it single family rentals or buildings of any sort.
Yeah. And let me ask you this. So in 5 years, where do you think you will be with your business?
Good question. Probably a lot like it looks today, but more and more properties in portfolio. I could see having higher quality assets in better locations. And so you might start to swap out some of the mom and pop tenants where you're getting maybe a little bit better returns for, I'll take slightly lower returns to have a Starbucks in my building who signs a 20-year lease. And you can feel pretty confident that they're going to pay their rent every single month. It's a corporate backed lease. So I see that happening. I also see going to, slightly larger and larger deals. I'm probably not going to jump from 3 million to 30 million. But, you start to work your way up. Doing a $6 million deal now would be very attainable. Doing an $8 or $9 or $10 million deal, it's it's really about the same amount of time and energy and underwriting, getting the loan and interviewing the tenants for, double or triple the cash flow in a lot of cases. And so that probably comes, like, two things have to happen there. You got to have the net worth or the partners to put that together. You got to have a banker that, feels comfortable doing those deals. You got to be able to raise that equity. And so I think all those things, grow organically or incrementally with each project and each broker and each investor that we forge new relationships with.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned, it's the same amount of work for the bigger deals. I interviewed somebody else who said $100 million deal was way easier than doing a $5 million deal.
You just think economies of scale, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I can afford to have a full-time bookkeeper. I have professional property management on site. I have a porter who's there 7 days a week. I can have a CPA doing all of my financials. I can have someone sending out the distribution checks on our quarterly basis. And the building can support all of those expenses. And what's awesome about retail and triple net leases is a lot of that gets passed through to the tenants, through the triple nets or the common area maintenance, which is just a great part. And I agree. I remember my banker telling me, she's like, Sean, do bigger deals because I make more money underwriting the loan and you make more on cash flow, and it takes us both the same amount of time. So I'm like, oh, okay. That was a bit of a wake up call to go play a bigger game.
Yeah.
Instead of chasing down $2 million deals, you should be looking at nothing less than $4 or $5 million. And I'm sure a couple of years from now, she'll say, don't get out of bed for less than $10 million. I think Brittany keeps pushing me to do that too. It's like, hey, play a bigger game, higher quality assets, better location. I think so much of that is mental and dependent on someone's comfort zone.
Yeah. So for you to go after those $6 and $8 million deals, what do you have to change about yourself to do that?
I mean, we could buy one of those today. I don't know that necessarily a lot has to change. It would be raising more equity than a $3 million deal. It would be taking on more debt than a $3 million deal, but fundamentally it's quite similar. I mean, my next deal might be that size. I don't know exactly. And it's not to say I wouldn't do $1 million or a $2 million deal, but it's the opportunity cost, right? If we're going to spend the time, we might as well go after one that's a little bit higher quality and has a bigger payday. For me, the biggest thing is really about the upside potential, right? If I'm buying something that's not just a coupon clipper to get, a straight cap rate, I can take it from a 6 cap to a 12 cap. Yeah. And then I can sell it for a 7 cap. And that creates significant profit margins or forces the appreciation into the building to get great returns, not just for our investors, but for our family too. And our interests are well aligned.
Yeah. And if somebody's looking to invest with you and learn more about your operation, where can they find you?
Everyone that we've worked with historically has an existing relationship with us. We want to be compliant where, we've got accredited investors, but I'm all for connecting with people. On my site, simplifiedproperties.com, you can find me on social media, you can email, you could call, someone could even view my calendar and book a call just to learn a little bit more about it. And then, Google me. I'm all over LinkedIn. That's one of my favorite platforms, or find me on Instagram or Facebook. I'm pretty easy to find.
That's great. Well, Sean, just want to say thanks so much for taking the time to share your success with us.
Yeah. And great to be on the show here, Seth. Congrats on your success and getting a successful channel cranking.
Yeah, no, thanks again. And I'll want to get you back on in about a year to tell us about the bigger deals you're doing.
There you go. Looking forward to it.
Perfect. And to you, our viewers, I wish you well in your journey from purchase to profits. See you next time.